Hello and welcome to our program Where God Weeps, a program where we talk about the suffering and persecuted church around the world. Talking about suffering, there's nothing worse than being a child, being abducted, and forced to become a soldier, a killer. Today we have a very special guest with us, Mr. David Livingstone from Uganda, who is going to share with us a very powerful testimony of pain, sorrow, and redemption. David, welcome to our program.
Thank you.
David, you are originally from Uganda.
Yes.
What part of Uganda?
Northern Uganda, in a small remote town called Kitgum.
Uganda, particularly that region, has a very difficult history.
Yes.
With war, and nowadays with all the refugees coming from Sudan.
Yeah.
But you yourself have a very impressive personal story.
I do, yes.
What happened to you, David?
When I was young, school-going boy, at the age of 16, we were in the primary school. The rebel came and surrounded our school, and they said, from today, no going to school. And we're like, why? And they said, if you want to find out, you come back tomorrow with a cooking utensil, because we're going to slaughter your teacher here, and you cook your own teacher to eat. And I guess we got the message very clear.
I'm sorry, I didn't understand that. They said that you will cook
your own teacher.
To eat
Yes.
your own teacher?
Yeah.
If you didn't come back?
No, if you do come back. Go home, no schooling. We say, why? Say, if you want to find out on earth, you come back tomorrow. But make sure you come with the cooking utensil, because anybody we find here will kill your own teacher and you cook your own teacher. And we got the message very clearly that these rebels were not playing around. They knew what they were doing. So we pack our books, we try to put in our bag and try to run out of the classrooms. And the government soldiers were up following these rebels. Within 5 minutes of us leaving, vacating the school's compound, they started bombarding, crisscrossing bullet, firing on the school grounds. We all ducked down, and after 15 minutes, the bullet went down. Then we managed to run as fast as we could get out of the school compound, because our home was not very far from the school, so the bullet was crisscrossing even into our compound. On reaching home, only to find out that our parents had already left home, because it was
when you arrived to your home.
Yes, from school.
You saw that your parents had
they already
fled
gone.
already.
They left, yes. So we tried to find out where they were. They already gone far into the bush, so we knew which direction they went. We started following.
And then what happened, David?
Well, we followed them far into the bush. On reaching there, we realized we did not carry any food items, and so we managed to make a curve, come back into the town. When we reached town, of course, there was nobody there waiting for us with food items. So with that, we spent the night. We were hungry. We didn't have anything to eat. The following morning, we thought, well, what are we going to do? We're not going to starve here. We have our sweet potatoes, we had our cassava and rice and whatever cereals we can find in the granary at home. Why don't we go and try to get something? So we tried to navigate our way through into the village. On reaching the village, what do we find there? The rebel has surrounded our compound. They've already slaughtered our goats and our chickens. They're already boiling and cooking. And we said, what are you doing here? Why are you here? We said, well, we've come here to collect some food items. And two of the young girls said, look, let us take food items because our siblings are starving. They're crying. There's no food. And one of the rebel commanders said, no food leaving this village. And this girl insisted, and he just picked up his gun and he shot them right there before us. Little did we know that the government soldiers were following this rebel. When they had where the bullet was fired, shooting these girls, they realized this must be the rebel. indiscriminately they start bombarding and firing toward the direction where we are at. And it was very risky for all of us. And one of the rebel commanders looked at me. There was a big cooking pot in the fire. He said, "You carry that in your head and run. Follow us, let's go. If you drop it down, I'll drop your life with it." Now, mind you, this was a hot saucepan with the boiling stew. And I had to carry it on my head. In the process of running, I stumbled. He said, "If you drop that, I'll drop your life, let me assure you." So the soup was pouring on my back, burning me from the saucepan. But remembering what they did to these two girls, there was no doubt they would have done it to me. So I ran with them into the bush. And that was the beginning of my trauma. I had no idea what to expect. I didn't know at 16 years of age.
So after you were taken or abducted by them from your village, how much time did you spend with them?
6 months.
Doing what?
Well, as you say, terrible to see these images and to hear all this that has taken place. I was literally in the middle of that. You've never imagined you would ever see in your life. You hear people cry, you see blood, you see unbelievable pain, anguish, fear and trauma.
David, so you participated in
I
some of
was
these
in the middle
attacks?
of this war. I was right there. They use you, they desensitize you
How?
by making you do things that
Always,
it's very difficult to describe.
always fearing for your own life.
Yeah.
If
Oh,
you
yeah.
don't do it,
Yeah, they
then
kill you.
you're dead.
Because they make example out of you and in the middle of all that. So either do it or die.
Now, how did you get out of it?
Well, that's another story for another day. Believe me, it was either die or accept change and transformation to take place in my life. As I was telling you, for 6 months in that bush, it's like 6 years. Every day passes by, you just wonder, how will I ever get out of this? Even if you get out of that, how do you get it out of your head? How do you get it out of your system? How do you turn off the memory, the trauma, the vision?
Images that
Exactly.
that
How
get
do you switch that off? That's
your
one of
heart and in
the
your
most difficult thing to live with. Because I could be sitting with you here talking to you, but in my head I'm seeing a different picture altogether. I'm hearing different voices and things like that. And that is where you thank God for His grace and mercy. Because when a certain lady by the name Alice Lakwena, who came in with this rebel group, they were having a conflict of interest in themselves, and they started fighting. And in the middle of that fight, that's where few of us, about 20 of us in numbers, managed to escape and run with the bullet and bombardment behind you like this. You know, you crawl with your bare chest on the ground. And we managed to escape and run. On reaching government soldiers in town, we reported to them, we said we have just escaped from the rebel. And they did not believe us. They said, "No, you've been sent to spy in on us." So we were put in prison. From prison, they transferred us to the bigger prison, which is in Kampala, called Luzira. I was in prison for another 6 months. And believe me, my hope was just dashed away. Because I thought after escaping from the rebel, the government would provide, would take care of us, would, help us out. When they didn't believe us and put us in prison, what more is left to hope for except to die? And hopefully you would rest from all this trauma that you've gone through. So that was my experience.
David, how do you stay sane mentally? Because going through so much stress, anguish, terror, your own human psychology would be shattered. How can you survive?
I don't want to compare myself with Apostle Paul, but I think the common thing that brings us together is the grace of God in Christ Jesus, because there was no any other way out. I hated living. I just didn't want to live because I didn't know how to live. It's a world that completely not my world. I never dreamt or wished to be born and wind up in a world of that which I have passed through myself. As I grew up, I became very violent. I was angry. I was suicidal. I wanted to do something to hurt somebody so that somebody can hurt me, and I finish my life there. And then I was just giving you the episodes of my experience after we've been put in the prison in Luzira. We were going to be transferred to another camp, which I had never been there, thankfully, because as they transfer us from the big prison Luzira to the railway station, waiting for the train to take us to this other next location, which would be like a death camp or something of that nature. And this is a time whereby media was not even aware of what was really going on in Uganda. This is between
what year are we talking about?
87.
87.
Yes. So nobody knew any of this. I was not even educated that much, and I didn't know any other language. So I was in the middle of the city. As you know, Uganda has so many different languages in the tribal area and so on. So as we were waiting for the train, some of my tribesmen who knew where my uncle used to work in the city said, "Oh, that one there is a police barrack where your uncle used to work." So I thought, oh, maybe let me go. I might find my uncle. Maybe he'll give me a jacket or clothes or something that will keep me warm. As we were waiting for the train, I managed to sneak between the cart of the train and went across to the barracks, police barracks. Started asking if somebody knew of my uncle. And of course they thought I was crazy because the way I had appeared, I had a dreaded,
the way you were dressed,
overgrown,
the way you
my
looked.
backside hanging hard, my clothes is all torn, very dirty, and almost I have no life in me. And a gentleman who had the name of my uncle said, "Oh, okay, go to that gentleman there, he might help you. He knows your uncle." On reaching to that other gentleman, he said, "Why do you look like this?" He was surprised because he thought maybe I was crazy and not right in my head. I explained everything to him. I said, "Well, we've been in the prison, put us here in the railway station waiting for the train to take us to the other place." He said, "Do you know the name?" I gave him the name of the place. He said, "Oh, my son, get inside." I got inside the house. He said, "Please don't bring me trouble." I said, "I don't know. I'm not bringing any trouble. I only need help." He said, "Where you're going, you will never come out alive. Please don't go. Stay here, indoor." And that was the beginning of my new beginning. I stayed in the house from 1 o'clock in the afternoon until 7 in the evening. Then he walked me out when it was much darker. Then he took me to where my uncle was. Then he explained everything to my uncle. And that's when my uncle now started giving me another opportunity to go back and learn in a primary school. But most school I go to, I was not catching up with the learning simply because of the trauma I'd gone through. And then they found this special school, they call it Ambassador of Hope, in the city. And then I started going to school there.
It was really, you needed a treatment of rehabilitation after the trauma that you had experienced.
Exactly.
Now, David, you were born in a Catholic family?
Yeah. My dad is a Catholic, and my maternal grandpa from Anglican background. Yeah.
And but now you have mentioned the grace of God in several times in our conversation.
I did.
How the grace of God came into this so horrific scenario.
As I mentioned earlier, that I was very traumatized and I wanted to commit suicide. School was an excuse, just keep me going. In my head, in my heart, I was like, I don't want to live. Because I live among these other children. They may come from poverty, they may come from abused family and things like that, but they have never experienced what I went through. So me living with them and talking and playing with them, to me it was...
You felt like an outsider.
Exactly. So my life is completely different. I can't fit in. What I hear, what I see, they don't see. They don't understand me. And so to me, I was just ready to give it up. And I think the teachers in school, they noticed it, like, David, something is wrong with you. What is it?
And how were you able to trust God after being...
Well, because
so
I already, as I said, I come from Catholic background from my dad, and I was raised up, like when I go to visit my grandpa, he would send me every Sunday to ring a bell in the church so people can come to church on Sundays.
Beautiful memories.
Yes, so we used to sing songs, Christian songs, the church, catechism. So it was lovely knowing that you come up from that. However, the question remained, why? I grew up from a good family, Christian family. Why has to happen to me? Does God really care?
How do you respond to that?
That was my question, asking him. I was just giving up on him. I was in the process of saying he doesn't care. I was in the thinking like, this God is just something to play with our mind to calm us down, but he's not real. Because if he's real, why would he let a young person like me to experience this trauma, this pain, this ugly memory and image in my life? He must love other people but not me. That's all I could say, But you see, that is when we begin to play our mindsets to the reality of who God is. Our mind play a game like, is he really? Does he care? Our heart begin to doubt and questioning things. But softly and gently and kindly, voices begin to whisper to me, asking me questions, almost like a Job episode of question in the book of Job.
Yes, of course. It is the history.
How many people
Job
died? How many have you buried? When this bomb happened, why have I spared you? Yet other one died. And I started thinking, I didn't have the answer for these questions going on in my head. And slowly but surely I began to acknowledge the fact that God must have been doing this for me, and I had not even think of it that way. And so I believe he loves me. I cried out, said, God, please forgive me, I'm sorry. That was 1988, 10 o'clock in the morning.
You really remember? It's
yeah.
like Saint Paul.
There was a transformation that took place there. The weight, the burden, the pain, the joy that came in. I was smiling and people never understood. Mind you, then I was quiet. I didn't smile, I didn't talk to anybody. But this time, my life was transformed. I'm turned around. I was full of joy. I was happy. I was smiling. And my auntie at home said, David, something's wrong with you. I said, no, there's nothing. I said, no, you don't behave right. I'm afraid that your experience in the jungle has finally caught up with you. Maybe the ghost of those you've been involved with in the jungle has finally come into your world. You're smiling even when there's nothing for you to smile about. And
so she literally thought that you went crazy.
Yeah. So I said, no, God has touched me today. I have given my life back to God again, and he has touched me. She threw me out of our home. She didn't want me. She said, no, I'm afraid something's wrong with you. And I'm like,
your aunt?
Auntie is the wife to my uncle. And I'm like, now what do I do? God just touched me. God transformed me. God did something in my world. She threw me out. I was angry. I was devastated. That was the last straw that broke my back. I'm like, come on, God, this is not right. There is war going on in the village. I'm here in the city. I don't have any other relative. What do I do with my life? I went back to school. I explained to them. I said, look, I don't have a home to go to. I don't have a place to stay. My auntie just threw me out. I don't know what to do. And the school was like, David, we know how dangerous when you go back and the rebel re-abduct you. They would have no mercy on you. They would kill you. So please, all I wanted was, please help me, give me transport money, let me go back in the village and stay there, because that's the only place I rather live or die. No, David, you can't. Let us look for a place we can give you, or somebody or somewhere. So there was this missionary from New Zealand. She was teaching Christian teaching in the community around Kampala. They talked to this missionary, and she came. She said, "I can take him. I'll take him at home." So she took me. So I grew up in that home, in learning the things of God, healing, receiving healing, and praying, deliverance. So that's how my life was turned around.
Now, David, it's so painful to hear it. I have to say, David, to thank you for opening your soul to us. And it when I hear it, I can't be indifferent to your pain and sorrow. But at the same time, I see this tremendous transformation. I'm assuming that there is a whole generation of men like you.
Oh, yes.
And your testimony would be very important and very valuable to them. Are you doing this kind of work in your country?
That's exactly what I was doing, testifying to them, telling them what I have gone through, help them to open up to talk about it so they don't lock themselves away and thinking and hoping that suicide would be the option they should take, because you can't live like that.
There's no
but
healing.
Helping people to talk it over and trusting the Lord that He understands what we are going through and He would see us through and help us out with it. To me, that was what worked for me, and I think any of them who have listened to me today, they look back and say, "Thank you, you have done something, thank you." Every time I go places in the village, "You are the guy, oh, thank you, you did this." I'm like, "What? I don't even know you." And so that's
the work of
how
God.
My life has been. Ever since early 2000, I've set up a local radio station during the peak of the war, because it was very risky going into the community. And abductivities were still happening. The landmines on the road were still there, and the ambushes were still very much there. The only way I could think of reaching out to the local was by setting up a FM radio station, so you can talk and reach out to the community, and that's what I did.
And with such a powerful message.
Oh yes. I can tell you a story that I always live to tell. A woman whose husband was abducted, her children were abducted. She was a nurse in the hospital. She just woke up one day and said, "There's nothing worth living for." She decided she was going to commit suicide. So she took some tablet from the hospital. She wanted to just take it, overdose herself, and go. And this particular day, I was behind the mic. I was just saying, "Look, this God is big. He's a God of hope. He's a God of tomorrow. I don't know what your today or what your yesterday has been like, but I can assure you that your tomorrow will be different. Don't give up hope. The last thing you should ever give up is hope." Imagine, maybe you're thinking, "My children are gone, my husband is dead," and you feel like there's nothing worth living for. But imagine that your kid also out there thinking, "If only I could escape from this, I would go to my mom and just go home and be with my mom." That's what I was thinking when I was in the bush. When I was going through this pain, that was what was going on in my mind. So imagine if you choose to do the wrong thing right now, what kind of a devastation that would be for your child who is out there. Imagine they hear that mom is dead. What kind of havoc would they do out there, feeling like they're revenging for what they have lost, So don't give up. And me having said this on the radio, you're assuming somebody's listening, but you don't know what this person is going through. And that's what I did. One day this woman ran to our office in town, and she just came crying and hugging me and said, "You saved my life, you saved my life." I'm like, "Leave me alone, woman. I'm not Jesus, I can't save your life. I don't know you. Who are you?" After she cried and sobered, and then she started narrating.
She was listening to you that day.
Me on the radio. And I thought, my goodness, thank you, God, for the power of the media that has reached out to this woman. If that was the only woman worth saving, it was worth it 1,000 times. So I live to appreciate media for what it does in the lives of people out there.
David, we have to finish our conversation, but I want to leave our audience with a message of hope. And tell me about your life now. You're married, You have a family.
I'm married. I have 5 wonderful children. I have 4 girls, beautiful, and 1 boy. And I work in the community where people life have gone through the episode of this experience I've gone through myself. I still run the radio station. I also work in the community helping the children and the community affected with this. I don't know whether you've ever heard of a disease called nodding syndrome, but where children mysteriously having this nodding syndrome constantly, and they become stunted, they don't grow. So I work in the community. During the war, many people were forced to live in the IDP camp, which is internally displaced persons camp. Mm-hmm. And they've lost their cattle, they've lost their chicken, they've lost their goats. So we work to restore that, because the livelihood of the people in our village, they use the ox and plow to help them do farming, whereby now farming has become very difficult for many because they don't have those skills anymore. So we're trying hard to restore that. At the same time, I am working to build some vocational training institute in the community, whereby young people can learn tailoring, young girls and boys. Some can learn carpentry, some can do building work and welding and so on. So at least when they have a skill, they're able to generate some income to take care of their families, and also work with the churches in the community. And so yes, quite a number of activities I do. My wife is a professional. She's a home economist person. She does cooking and hotel management. So she's training young people to do bakery, making donuts and pastry here and there. So we're trying to give the skill back into the community, whereby people can learn something that give them creative and have opportunity to get some job into their world right now. So that's what we do.
David, thank you so much for this very inspiring testimony of pain, sorrow, but mostly love and redemption.
Yeah.
Thank you, David.
Thank you.
And thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for being with us in another episode of Where God Weeps. If you want to know more about the work that the church is doing in Africa with victims of war, we encourage you to contact the information at the end of this program. Thank you, and God bless.